What is up, SVSers? Welcome to another episode, number 73 of the SVS Audiophile Happy Hour. And we got a smaller
war
crowd
of attrition.
today.
We have two dropouts.
I know, seriously, we got a smaller crowd today, but I see the comments are already flying in. So thank you for everybody who showed up on time today. We greatly appreciate it. Larry is en route from Washington State on a plane. And Ed had a little medical procedure. He's doing fine, just for the record. So our lead sound expert will be back.
Everybody should send Ed well wishes. He maybe he's watching. Let's all wish him well.
Absolutely.
But Nick and I are going to shake up the house. We're going to have our own party. Promise.
That's right.
We said.
We're super excited about our special guest and some of the other topics we have to talk about tonight. But it's going to be the A team, I guess, or maybe.
Well, Nick said I have to be fun this time. Like we can't count on Larry and Ed to rescue us and make
that's
it
right.
fun.
And you can't be staring at your TikTok. You can't be watching videos on your phone. It's full engagement today. But
yes.
For anybody who may be here for the first time, we try to keep things casual, have fun, talk about audio, music, and some other things. Our guest tonight, very excited, second time on the program, Mr. Glendon Rusch. He is a 13-year Major League Baseball veteran, and also somebody who ran into Gary at a recent concert. Is that right?
Yeah, we saw Tool together.
So we're going to talk a little bit about live music and some of our favorite experiences because we're all big live music fans. And I think there's some parallels to what we do in the world of home audio as well. So looking to have some fun talking about that. But first thing I would like to say is we're going to have 3 giveaways tonight. And typically this is where Larry will read them. But because he's not here, I'm going to channel his spirit. All you got to be do to be eligible to win these wonderful giveaways is to leave a comment. 1 comment gets you 1 giveaway. 100 comments doesn't get you 100 entries, but you're free to have chats and open up little conversations with people on the side there. It's fair to say we might do a little bit more audience participation today with the only 2 of us in the house. So the giveaway.
This is an opportunity to sort of have a little bit of 30,000-foot conversations, and if people want to ask, you're vice president of the company, I'm president of the company, maybe ask some stuff about SVS. We're happy to do that if our SVS community is interested.
Absolutely. Little less in the super technical realm, more in the big sort of picture kind of thing. We're happy to answer and address those questions. But our giveaways for the evening, we have 3. The first one is going to be a pair of our Prime Wireless Pro powered bookshelf speakers. Second giveaway will be a pair of our wildly popular Prime Elevation speakers, great for Dolby Atmos, surround sound, and other applications. And then our final giveaway of the evening will be an SB1000 Pro subwoofer. So just leave comments. I will announce the winners live on the air. And then Vince, my colleague, will reach out to you behind the scenes, get your shipping information, and we'll get those sent out by tomorrow. But there's 2 of us. We're going to stick with our tradition.
Here's a good question from Jeff. He says, how did you how did you become interested in wanting to build speakers? So that to me is an interesting one to talk about. So let's save it anyway for when we're doing that. But I thought that was a good question, actually.
Absolutely. Eli, grab that question. How do we first become interested? And put that one in the chat. So let's stick with tradition and go with, what we've been listening to and tuning into recently. We'll do the live music thing with Glendon. But Gary, I'll flip it over to you. Any music, new albums, new shows you've been checking out?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have these very interesting prototype speakers I've been listening to for the last couple of weeks. Can't talk, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Can't talk too much about them other than to say that I have rediscovered some music that I had sort of left on the shelf. I've rediscovered my record player. I have a really nice record player. It's a Lin table that I've had for many years, but it has all the latest upgrades, latest power supply, and things like that. And so I listened to Radiohead's In Rainbows. It's a 45 RPM vinyl pressing, and it just sounds awesome. Also listening to Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy. That's been my go-to demo, playing no quarter. And as far as streaming TV, because of a recommendation of someone on our team who I don't remember who it was, maybe you do, Nick, I watched the We Are the World documentary that's on Netflix. And I really didn't want to watch it, except everyone's talking about it. And I never liked that song very much. But the story behind it, apparently, I found out, is totally fascinating. Seeing, really the top musical acts of the time all in one place. There's a funny joke where one of them says, "Hey, if somebody dropped a bomb on this studio, John Denver could rise back to the top of the charts," because it was like everybody who was anybody was there. Really a cool documentary. I definitely recommend it. Even if you weren't around in the 80s, you'll know who these people are. So very cool.
And that was Thomas, our director of international sales, who suggested that. And he made the claim that that was the greatest collection of musical talent in the history of music. I think he took it to that level.
Well, it might be true. I mean, you got Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Stevie Wonder, who we got to meet, right? We met.
We didn't even talk about CES. Well, we should do that after I go through the stuff that I go through. We haven't had a broadcast in CES.
Have we not had a broadcast in CES? I didn't realize that. Okay,
no.
We definitely should talk about that. But that's a pretty amazing gathering of musicians. Oh, and Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones doesn't get talked about a lot, but Quincy Jones is the one who created the big Michael Jackson albums. I mean, he was the producer, and I'm sure he had a ton to do with how great they were. So yeah, that is Thomas might be right.
Yeah. Well, I have a smaller list. I did finally watch Oppenheimer, and my gosh, is there not some rumble in that movie? And I thought, as much as it was, a 3-hour movie, it was paced pretty well. But some of that rumble from my Dual SP4000s, I was dog sitting and he was scratching to get out of the room. It startled him. Some of the moments, I think people probably know what I'm talking about. But I just loved the story. I didn't realize it was going to be that kind of biopic, but it was really good. For All Mankind, that was a recommendation from our comment section. So I had been watching Invasion on Apple TV, and this is sort of another, space race type show where basically it's a continuation of if the space race between the U.S. and Russia continued, and it's a good one to watch with your significant other. It's got a decent mix of emotion, but some good sound scenes as well, and just great scripting. So I recommend For All Mankind if you're into that sort of sci-fi, but also historical genre as well. And then I have to throw it. I got to see if people are watching Vanderpump Rules. Like I have a friend who just started watching it with his wife, and I've managed to stay away, but it seems like this cultural phenomenon. So I don't know if people, what they think.
What is it about, Nick? It's a reality show, right?
It's a reality show. And I go in there when my wife's watching and I sort of make fun of the characters, but it's like, it's become a cultural thing. So it's, something that's hard to avoid. And then I'm super excited. I got tickets to see my favorite DJ of all time. He's actually from Columbus, Ohio. In a lot of ways, he's like the soundtrack to my work life because he plays ambient music with no lyrics. And when I'm working, I don't like to hear singing. His name's RJD2, and he'll be playing at the Brighton Music Hall in Boston on March 7th. So if anyone's in the area, come check it out. We can hang. But RJD2, so I'm excited to see him in Boston in about a month here. So.
I didn't know you were an EDM kind of dude. That's interesting.
It's more like instrumental chill. It's not like heavy pounding bass. It's like he takes cuts from other music, and it's much more like ambient than it is like dance music. It's just like sort of chill, I would say. I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. But
I have definitely come around to the idea of DJs creating an amazing experience. I got really into it when I learned about because I wanted to do my homework on DJ Jazzy Jeff, who's still a very active guy doing live DJ performances, and I've learned a lot about it. It's really amazing how they can create, how you feel with their craft. So
yeah, no, and they definitely are able to establish like a mood and sort of a level of emotion that I think you get surprised by sometimes without words. But yeah, I've just enjoyed him as sort of the background to working for a long time. All right, well, let's address the elephant in the room, I guess we should say, Gary, because we were at CES recently, and there may have been some news that somewhat leaked out while we were at the show. So I'll leave it at that. But I will say this was one of the most memorable CESs I've ever been to. It's the largest technology trade show in the world. So there's always some things that you get to experience. I got to meet Barry Sanders, my favorite NFL player last year. There's always crazy tech, but this year was even a little bit more special. What do you have to say about that, Gary?
I mean, yeah, we made, I think most of I'm looking at the comments. I think a lot of people know what we did, which was we did a surprise launch of an all-new Ultra Evolution speaker line, and we're going to talk about them. I don't want to talk about them on this one. We have another one coming up in a couple of weeks, right, Nick? That's closer to the actual physical launch of the speaker. So we will definitely talk about them. And you know, all I'm going to say is the reception we got at CES, where you're in a 2 million square foot, you know, massive, cavernous, noisy place. And I'm like, you know, how are people even going to appreciate how great these are? But boy, they really, really and truly did. The response was amazing. I can't wait to share them with you and what we did. They are our masterpieces. I'll leave it at that, and we'll talk more about it on a future show. And now we're closing out Ultra Series, the existing Ultra Series speakers, which is fun because we're bringing them to prices they've never been at, and people are scarfing them up. So that's been a lot of fun. Look, everybody who's familiar with SVS says, oh, you know, we know you make amazing subwoofers. We are the #1 subwoofer brand in the world, and I'm really proud of that. But a lot of people don't realize we're in the top 7 speaker brands in the world, and we want to be in the conversation of the just finest speakers at any price. I did see a couple of comments about, you know, they're a little more expensive than the existing Ultra Series, and that's true. But I will say that they to quote a reviewer talking about something else of ours, they punch way above their class. I've had them in the, I've had some prototypes in my house up against speakers that are over 20,000 a pair, and they're acquitting themselves very, very well. We'll talk more about that when we're together next.
And we may actually get a little bit into sort of the theory and our thinking behind product design in general later on in the broadcast, not so much specific to the Ultra Evolution, but sort of, you know, give a little teaser there. But I did want to hear about, you know, sort of your experience with Stevie Wonder and what you sort of took away from that, because, you know, I just started listening to his music all over again after that because, you know,
well, me too, actually. I'm funny you say that. And I will, you know, people, I'm sure a lot of our audience, a lot of the people on the watching the show right now are were not around during Stevie's peak. But I would say in the early 70s to early to mid 70s, he had a run of something like 6 or 7 what I would call perfect albums, just almost sheer perfection. And if you want to just pick one that sounds amazing and just doesn't have a weak moment on it, I would definitely recommend get Inner Visions or stream Inner Visions, all one word. It's about as good as music got in the 70s, I would say. It's just totally amazing. So he's one of my heroes. I remember in college we would listen to him, and you know, he was. I don't think most kids in my college were listening to Motown, but Stevie was the exception. He was super. Stevie and Marvin Gaye, they were the super cool Motown people, So when I get this text from a guy that knows Stevie and is a friend of mine and says, hey, Stevie would like to come to your CES booth, would that be okay, or would it be too much of a distraction? I said, oh my gosh, please, it would be amazing. And so about an hour later, we get this text from his handlers, and they're like, Stevie only has 10 minutes. We need you to respect his time. Let him, he needs to leave. And, you know, he's interested in SVS. He knows about SVS. He wants to see your products and learn more, but then he's got to go. So, and I'm like, no problem. Totally cool. 10 minutes is great. We'll give him the very quick tour of our booth. And guess what? He stayed almost 2 hours. He absolutely loved the new speakers, but where he really fell in love and where he just sat and just wouldn't leave was Prime Wireless Pro. He sat and played music that has not been released, that he was creating. He had like 100 versions of one track, and he was just playing different versions of it over and over again and listening to it. And he just didn't leave. And loved our speakers, loved Prime Wireless Pro, requested a set, which we, of course, will send him. So that was, you know, hey, a bucket list moment for me and for you, right, Nick?
No doubt. And one of the reactions I got was just seeing how people would just stop in their tracks. He's that kind of legend and icon where you're just like, they do the double take where like, no, wait, what? And then, to see him bobbing his head and just sort of, getting into the music was just really a rewarding moment. And, it sort of just makes you take pause. You're at a trade show and it's sort of like business as usual, but something like that just makes you reflect a little bit deeper about, the joy that you can bring people. So it was a lot of fun.
There is a word that gets overused. We were talking about this, Nick. There's a word that gets overused a lot. Like everybody says, oh, this person's iconic. This person's iconic. They're an icon. They're an icon. Well, guess what? There aren't that many icons, but Stevie Wonder is an icon. Yeah. Absolutely. It was really joyful to have him there.
All right. Well, I think we should bring on Glendon if you're cool with that, and then we'll get to some of the
Glendon's great. He's a kindred spirit.
We have some other things, some glossary terms that we'll save towards the end here. But I want to welcome for the second time back to the SVS Audiophile,
Glendon
Rusch, the 13-year MLB veteran who's joining us here, also an SVS owner. And I appreciate you taking the time. I know his son's got a double header that he's playing in right now, but it seems like you get plenty of opportunities to go see him play. So maybe I shouldn't feel too bad. Is that right, Glendon? I think you're muted. I got to unmute you.
Glendon. We need to hear your wisdom.
There it is.
I did. It worked out great today because I got to see all of Game 1 and the first inning of Game 2, and I came back and I'm here with you guys. So I'm honestly listening to that Stevie Wonder story got me really excited because I would be the exact same as Stevie when I visit your booth. I wouldn't leave, and I'm sure you guys would be like, "All right, Glendon, let's go. We got to clean up for the day and get out of here."
Well, I found out after
love hanging out with you, Glendon.
There was this group of people.
That would be awesome. Hopefully, we can make that happen
in like a 1 million square foot booth next to ours who were coming over after hours and like playing with our Prime Wireless Pro, like turning on the Bluetooth and having dance parties in our booth when we weren't even there. And part of me is like, what a violation.
I feel violated really when I heard that.
But then I'm also like, well, they didn't break anything and they took pictures and they were showing them to me. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool actually that, you're in this, multi-million-dollar booth and you're coming over and having a dance party in ours. Although next time invite me. That's my only criteria. But that aside, Glendon, I gotta ask, we always do, what have you been tuning into? Any music recommendations or new shows that you can share with our community they might be into?
Music wise, I've kind of stuck in my same box that I'm always in. A lot of rock, a lot of metal. I have branched out and listened to a little bit of country, which is completely out of my jurisdiction. A little of that Morgan Wallen stuff everyone was talking about. I've enjoyed that a little bit. I did like the Luke Combs cover of Fast Car when he did that. That was kind of cool.
I thought that was great on the Grammys. That was a highlight, I think, of the Grammys, watching him do that with Tracy Chapman.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was really cool. And the Grammys have gotten tougher and tougher to watch because I don't think I know the music well enough. But as far as shows, Nick, I will be here to tell you that I've seen every episode of Vanderpump Rules. So my wife loves a lot of those shows, and that's one I have seen all of them, and it is very intriguing, and you get caught up in this fantasy world that all those people live in, and it's interesting how it's sucked everybody into it. But
it's a cultural phenomenon. Now there's all these spin-offs with like some of the characters who people hate, seeing them get like punished in like, army boot camp training. And so it's become its own thing. And it's just going to keep manifesting into different things, I think. But it's unavoidable.
Yes, it's a phenomenon. I loved Oppenheimer. I thought that was great. Great sub movie too.
No
some
doubt.
low frequency in that film is really, really cool. The new TV show I've kind of been checking out and I'm, I guess, halfway hooked into is the new True Detective.
Oh, yeah. I meant to mention that.
Do you like it?
I do like it so far. I've kind of seen mixed reviews. I always love reading people's reviews because some people are just like, oh, it's not for me and I don't like this and that and whatever. But so far I've liked it. And I think there was one other one that I've been what you mentioned, Gary. I heard that documentary is phenomenal, and I'll watch. My favorite things are either sports or music documentaries. That's kind of my favorite genre to watch. So I'll be excited to see that. I agree with you though, Gary. That wasn't my favorite song in the world, but I'm sure the story behind it and everybody that was involved is great, and I've heard great things about it.
It's very cool. Definitely worth watching, even if you don't like the song. And you just reminded me of something that I just started. This is one that people might not know what it is, and so I'm going to put it out there. I just started Griselda. Have you guys heard of this?
Yes.
It's made by the same people that made Narcos and Narcos Mexico, and it's about this woman drug lord. I've only seen the first episode because my wife and I watched it, and we liked it so much. She's like, you don't get to watch it unless we watch it together, so I have to wait. But it was definitely a good start. I think it's going to be really promising.
Cool. That's a good recommendation. I just saw the trailer for that the other day. I'll definitely check that out.
The first episode will grab you. If you like Narcos, it'll grab you. I won't say anymore. I don't want to do spoilers.
I actually thought it was about one of the sisters from Cinderella. That's her name, and I knew that from
when my wife was like, "Let's watch this," and I'm like, "What is it?" And then I realized it was made by the people who made Narcos and Narcos Mexico, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm in. Let's check it out."
That sounds more interesting. Yeah.
Is it Sofia Vergara?
Yeah, she's Sofia Vergara, and the story is she, which you can tell she had to get made up so she wasn't as attractive as she normally is, and she barely looks like herself, but she does, at least in the first episode, she did a great job.
Cool.
So we're going to go through and we're going to name our top 5 live music acts we've seen. But before we do that, I did want to ask you, Glendon, why, just in general, are you such a fan of going to see music live? Because I mentioned earlier, Gary and you met up at a Tool show a couple weeks ago. But what is it about the live music experience that really draws you in?
I think I've always had a huge fascination with how talented musicians are, and to actually watch them do what they do live, to me, is the equivalent of, I've heard over the years many people say athletes always want to be musicians and musicians always want to be athletes. There's this tie there of what we did professionally on a field or on a court or whatever, and what they do, and there's definitely similarities to preparation, focus, 10,000 hours of practice, and all these things that they go through. I think is, for me, I've always had a huge amount of respect. Anytime I see a musician play live, I think it's just awesome. And so I've been really lucky, honestly, over the years, through baseball and meeting guys and meeting different people from different bands, and then connecting with other people. And it's become this huge web of people I've gotten to meet and know in the music industry. And so I've gotten to see a lot of live shows, and I just love it.
Yeah. And I think, when you find an act that really, catches your attention or does it for you, you want to go see them over and over and over again, which I think, is Gary with Tool and Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I got a few of those as well. But before we get to our list, I do want to do a giveaway, because we are due for a giveaway. Our first of the evening is our Prime Wireless Pro powered bookshelf speakers. And the winner of those is one RJ Machado. RJ Machado, congratulations.
Hey, RJ.
We'll get your info and get those speakers shipped out. So I want to first preface this list we're going to do by saying we also want you to, in the comments, leave your favorite live music act that you've ever been to. Could be concert in a big stadium, could be in a more intimate setting like a club, but whatever your favorite live music experience was, we want to see it in the comments as well. And I'm going to we'll go one by one, and I'll share mine first, and then we'll go to you, Glendon, and then we'll
start
go to
with number 5, and then we'll work our way to our number 1.
All right. Well, I was not going to do it in any specific order, but I think this is actually the order that they go in. My number 5 is George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars at Lupo's in Providence, Rhode Island. This is one of the first shows I ever went to by myself or with my friends as like a 17-year-old. And just the combination of the funk with like the setting and the scene and the people there. Acoustically, it wasn't, I don't think, the greatest venue, but like they have just so much going on stage that to me, that was definitely in my top 5, George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. So Glendon, I'll kick it to you next.
I have a tie for my 5 spot. And because the reason there is because
you're just trying to sneak in 6. I know what you're doing here.
I got an honorable mention, so I'm doing it too.
It's because this guy is maybe my favorite vocalist of all time by far, and it's Audioslave and Soundgarden. I'm going to put them together as my number 5, and I've been fortunate to see both. And Chris Cornell has one of the most beautiful rock voices there is.
Gary, what do you have for number 5?
Well, I go back and forth because I have a couple of honorable mentions too. But you know, if I were going to throw out honorable mentions, I would throw out Bob Dylan and the White Stripes. Those were two that Dylan's probably the one I've seen the most of anyone. I've probably seen him 30 or 40 times, and it's different every time. But my number 5 is Prince. I think it was at his peak, he was about as good as it gets, I think. Although I have 4 better ones.
All right. So my number 4, this was more of and I've talked about this on the broadcast before, is Woodstock 98. And if I had to pick one act from Woodstock 98 that was sort of defining of the whole experience, it was probably Limp Bizkit. Not because they played the best set, because that's where stuff really started to go haywire, and it sort of captured the whole mood and the whole sentiment of what that concert ended up devolving into. So I would say Woodstock 98 with a combination of Limp Bizkit and then Fatboy Slim in the rave tent was also, again, indicative of a lot of, I think, what went wrong with that concert. But it was one of the most memorable, and I certainly am glad I made it out unscathed. Glendon, number 4 for you.
My number 4, if you remove the C from my last name, there's a band named Rush, and one of my favorites. I've seen them quite a few times. It's unfortunate we've lost Neil Peart, but amazing live.
Gary, what do you have for number 4?
Number 4 for me is System of a Down. I think they were every time I've seen them, and that's one my whole family agrees on. I've literally gone all the way to Belgium to see them. They're to me, they are stunning to experience live. There's like nothing, because what they do, and my bias is something where magic is happening in real time, and that is one where it does.
Well, my number 3 is a band we've talked about a lot, and I know you've seen a bunch of times, Gary, is the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who I've seen a few times, but this one specifically was at the Tweeter Center, which is now the Xfinity Center in Massachusetts. And, you know, I've seen them at Fenway Park, and I thought the acoustics were not very good, and my seats were not very good. So this concert at the Xfinity Center was memorable also because, and this is probably way TMI, my first child was conceived that night too. So there was that part of it too. And I think Anthony Kiedis and the boys had something to do with that. But Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Xfinity Center.
Are you sure you're the father is the question?
I'm pretty sure about that one. And it didn't happen at the concert, just for the record. So I'm not like that. I have some pride. But let's move on quickly before I say anything else stupid. And excuse me, Glendon, what's your number 3?
Number 3 has got to be Pearl Jam for me, especially growing up in Seattle. I've gotten to see them quite a few times. One of my highlights of seeing them was, of course, seeing them at Wrigley Field was pretty special.
Awesome. Gary, number 3?
Number 3 is a tie. Can I please? I just have too many that I love. It's a tie between Tool and The Clash.
All right. Tool and The Clash. There you go. And you've seen them, The Clash.
I saw The Clash at their peak before even London Calling came out, which tells you I'm an old guy. And Tool to me is just guaranteed spiritual experience. I totally recommend. In fact, we took the whole team to see Tool in Pittsburgh. Remember that, Nick? That was a fun night.
Mm-hmm. No, that was a great show. All right. Well, my we're getting up here now. My number 2 was and I was talked about this on a broadcast too, was Alt J at Boston University. They're one of my favorite.
You can tell some of this is generational. You know what I mean? It's just interesting. You can tell Nick's a little younger than I am.
But they just had it was a smaller sort of like ice hockey rink. The acoustics were phenomenal, and the light and sort of show that they put on to go along with the set. Because I was so close to it, just really drew me in, and I found that to be just one of the best concert experiences I've had. So that is my number 2. Glendon, what do you got?
First of all, I'm having fun watching the chat. There's some good ones coming.
I know. I'm trying to flash the good one. I've seen a lot of Prince. I didn't realize. I never had the opportunity to see
Prince. Was really great live. He loved being live, and you can see that Super Bowl show. You can see evidence of it.
Yes. I only was able to see Prince one time at the United Center in Chicago. It was phenomenal. Loved it. Number two, it was a pretty easy one for me, Rage Against the Machine. I was lucky enough to see them quite a few times, but I saw them at Coachella when they headlined it, and I also saw them at the LA Coliseum with 100,000 people there, and that was an experience. One of my favorite bands.
All right, Gary, number two. What do you got?
Number two was, for me, The Who while Keith Moon was still alive. That to me was a pretty spectacular. And a lot of it is also where I was at. I was in college, and what it meant to me. Some of it is very situational.
So that's where my number one pick comes in. Again, it was that time of my life. I was in college. I was couldn't rub two nickels together, and to be able to go to this show and get VIP access was amazing. And that was seeing the Roots on Lansdowne Street in Boston. They just do an incredible stage show where they have like this phantom sort of DJ spinning concept they pass the mic. They're so high energy. And I had not been to that many live music acts at that point. So to see that kind of production value without the big light show and all the production that goes into something like that, it was all just about the humans on stage, much like George Clinton in the same vein, but just a little bit later in my life. So that would be my number one, the Roots, seeing them on Lansdowne Street in Boston. Glendon, here's the big drum roll. What's number one?
Well, Gary already mentioned them, of course, and I love seeing them, and they're pretty tough to beat. Tool is my number one live band that I've seen a lot recently, and quite a bit over the last 25 years probably.
And you're friends with them. How cool is that? I mean,
that is a cool part. It is special. So cool. I've gotten to do some really special things with them. Danny, their drummer, has been a really good friend of mine for 20 years now, and he lets me get some fun behind the scenes stuff. So I'm very thankful for that. I never take that for granted.
Awesome. Well, I have to comment. Somebody just put Buddy Guy, and I forgot that I saw Buddy Guy, and he played guitar with his teeth and did the whole thing that I had no idea, he was going to do anything like that. So just from pure talent, I think Buddy Guy might be up there with one of the most talented musicians I've ever seen live. And he just did, almost like a one band show. It was just incredible. So sorry, now I'm throwing in extra credit answers too.
That's okay. It's just showing the passion we all feel. It's great.
All right, you got number one status here, Gary.
Well, you already blew my cover, because I do think it's kind of cool, in my opinion. The greatest live band of all time is Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think they create magic in real time. I just find them to be stunningly good, and I'm going to see them in 2 weeks. Guess where, Glendon? In Tempe, Arizona, at this Innings Festival, which I think has something to do with spring training.
Yes.
So that's where I'm going.
Awesome.
All right. Well, sorry, I do have to throw my honorable mention just because it was the weirdest one I've ever been to. I went to the Birdland Jazz Club in New York City with my son when we were looking at a school, and we went to go see, it was basically like a variety show night. So they had all sorts of different acts, but I saw a professional whistler, like a girl who's like the world's greatest whistler. Like there's a whistling championship, and the stuff she was doing, blowing air through her lips, was like unlike anything I've ever heard before. So if you get a chance to see a professional whistler, don't pay too much, but it's pretty interesting. It's there's some talent involved with whistling, and it's a whole thing. So but I did want to get in a couple other questions that are sort of in this realm, and one thing I've never been able to ask a professional athlete, it's sort of a two-part question. Is there anything like just running onto the field when there's just tens of thousands of fans like going rabid, nuts, crazy? And then with that in mind, would you rather be the one to make your hometown crowd erupt in like sheer joy, or shut up like 10,000 fans who are just completely, heckling you and looking to see you fail? Like, I'm just curious about what that moment is like as a professional athlete.
Well, the definitely the home crowd is a lot of fun, but the visiting crowd is cool. We used to use the phrase kind of like, wow, this 40,000 seat stadium turned into a library really quick when the visiting team comes in and beats up on them. But there's nothing like your home crowd. I mean, I was lucky enough to play in New York in that big market for the Mets and the Cubs at Wrigley Field, and to have 40 or 50,000 people on your back and just supporting you and wanting you to succeed and win for their team that day, that's pretty awesome. And I loved it.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
You must have so many cool memories, Glendon. I mean, all these things you've done. It's just really cool.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time I was extremely lucky just to be, to play as long as I did and be healthy to where I could stick around long enough to where I almost played kind of through two generations of baseball guys. So when I first came up in 97 as a rookie, there was a lot of Hall of Fame guys still playing. Eddie Murray was still playing. Cal Ripken was still playing. Paul Molitor, guys, I don't want to go too far down a baseball rabbit hole, but those guys were all still playing. And then I was there for the next generation of Albert Pujols and all these guys that are, came after that. So it was cool to get to be around and compete against all of those guys.
Very cool.
So, staying on the topic of music, you see guys walking into the stadium with their headphones on. Was music for you or people that you played with ever one of those sort of, leveling factors where you don't get too high, you don't get too low, you don't get too obsessed with the success and the failures? Like, how did music play into just your mentality, if at all, as an athlete? It's
amazing how music takes you into, if you're prepping for a game, into a state of relaxation, or as you get closer, it can, pump you up and take you into a start. And Gary and I might actually talked about this, but at the Tool show we were at, they played a song called The Grudge. Well, for 2 straight years, when I was with the Mets, that was the last song that I listened to, whether it be in the weight room or in the trainer's room or whatever, before I walked out on the field and started my warm-ups for a start that day. And so it's always been a special song to me. And every time I get to see it live, it's pretty special. But yeah, I think, now they do so much coverage behind the scenes of, like you were saying, Nick, with the guys walking into the clubhouse with their headphones on and all that. But music is an escape and a way to kind of get yourself focused. And really, back in the days when we listened to music as an open forum in the clubhouse, which not a lot of guys do anymore because everybody has headphones on, it was kind of the starting pitcher that day who controlled the music. And it was awesome because you'd have, Latin music one day, you'd have hard rock one day, you'd have country one day. If Al Leiter was pitching in New York, you had Bruce Springsteen playing for 2 straight hours. I mean, it was kind of a cool mix of, you'd go through whatever guys wanted their mood. If Greg Maddux was pitching, it was 80s, you'd hear like Journey and Boston and all that kind of cool stuff. So it was fun but I think that's changed now. Everyone's kind of gone more private and on their phones and headphones and all that stuff.
So did you have like walkout music when you came out of the bullpen? Did they have that, when you were playing?
Yeah, they did. That kind of came, a little bit like halfway into my career. And of course I used some Tool. When I was in Milwaukee, they played Rush songs for me all the time, which was really cool. So I just left it. I didn't even tell them to do that. They just did that on their own. And, but yeah, it was always cool to have walkout music, and it fires you up and, it gets you going.
Did anyone have music that was like completely counter to what you thought they might have? Was it like, just like, oh, wow, really? That's what they chose? Because that would always, make me laugh.
No, not that sticks out to me. I do remember, we were chatting on some of the stuff we might talk about somebody's walkout song. And one of my favorites ever was Brian Giles. He used to play Alice in Chains' Man in the Box, which I thought was such a cool, right? You're walking up and you're in the batter's box, and it was a great song too. So I always loved that one.
Well, if you know your baseball history, Glendon, the Nationals, the Nationals team that won the World Series, the Washington Nationals that won the World Series, they're the probably most beloved player, not their best player by any stretch, but one of the most beloved players is this dude named Gerardo Parra.
Oh, yes.
And his walkout music was Baby Shark.
Yeah.
And the whole city united behind this dude for Baby Shark.
Yeah. It is cool to see the fans just completely engage and eat up, whether it's somebody's song or, stuff that, even the college guys, you know, when I'm with my son's team, they all have walk-up songs as the hitters, and the guys on the bench get fired up. It's cool.
There's something about baseball that has that some degree of not taking itself insanely seriously. That's great.
So what's the process? I mean, are you telling like the actual announcer, like who's getting that music, and you know, how does it end up being played? Like, you know,
you're telling you know, whoever controls the booth up there and the board and the soundboard and all that, you'll send them up your song, and obviously a clean version of it, hopefully, and what second to start it at, and all, because you only have a kind of a short window the way the game works. So yeah, guys, and it's funny how superstitious it is too, because you'll see guys that's like 0 for 8 streak, and all of a sudden they're changing their walk-up song. It's pretty funny.
Well, I know you had a hand in getting your son into high performance audio, and you know, I think he's rocking a pair of Ultra bookshelves or Prime bookshelves with a sound base. You know, what sort of inspired that? And I'm just curious, you know, how he's taken to the new gear.
Well, he loves it, first of all, and he's got the primes and a I think a SB 1000 sub and a prime wireless bass. So he loves it, but it's funny how you have to like push them along to actually listen to music that's not on their ears, and I'm like, hey, turn some music on so you can actually listen to it, and you know, here's some depth in the music, and here's a sound stage and all that fun stuff. But they're like, no, I got my, you know, AirPods or whatever. And so I think we train them young, and then eventually they figure it out that they go, oh my gosh, this sounds so much better hearing a stage in front of me as opposed to just right on top of my ears.
That's so true. And, you know, my son's studying like film and cinematography, and, you know, so he's not as much into the audio thing, but when I play music that he listens to on his earbuds, you know, on our good system, he is just shocked by, you know, the layers that you don't get, you know, from listening in that other way. And I think, you know, the more that younger people can be exposed to that, the better it will be for all of us. And I know, Gary, you know, with these super secret speakers that you've had a fun experience with your kid as well. Just sort of doing the same thing.
Because my older son's got home a couple of nights ago, and in both cases, they were sort of humoring me. I'm like, you know, you want to hear these new ones? Oh yeah, okay, yeah, Dad's doing demos again. And but then they wouldn't leave, and they both made observations that they were hearing things in their favorite music that they hadn't heard, like details and things that were going on in the music that they didn't hear when they were listening with headphones. So to me, what a statement that is, and it's also a statement that there's a whole bunch of people that love music, love great sound, and they just need to get connected with the idea that they can have that in their living space. And that really is the SVS mission. I mean, we just want more people to enjoy great sound. That's how we, you know, try to bring reference experiences to price points where they never were before, and try to talk to people on their own level in a normal way. Like this conversation we're having with Glendon, might as well just, we're not audio nerds necessarily. We're just normal people who love great sound. Or I'm not that normal. Glendon, you're normal.
You know, and that actually raises an interesting point to me. And one of the things I think we try to do at SVS is maintain a very sort of direct conversation relationship with our community. It's why we do this, why we, you know, love doing the live events. And Glendon, I don't want to embarrass you, but I saw on Twitter, which now X, you know, people that were just thrilled that you were sending back autograph cards. They would write you a handwritten letter, and you'll actually return these cards. And these were people were posting pictures of it on Twitter, being just like so grateful. Why is that important to you to kind of have that relationship with, you know, I guess you call them fans?
Well, because I started out that way as a kid, growing up in Seattle and going to the Kingdom and watching Major League Baseball and basketball have kind of always been my love. I've adopted a little more football now as I've got older, but that was it for me. So if I got to meet a player or get an autograph from a player, I thought it was the most amazing thing. And so I've always been, to this day, anything that I get in the mail, I love signing and sending back. And I've always done all my fan mail throughout the years. And it's funny, since I moved to Louisville like almost 7 years ago, I guess. And they've found me even more here than they did in California. I think in California we used my in-laws' address, But for some reason, when I moved, the people that do all the autographs have found me. So I get, a decent amount of probably 7 to 10 pieces a week that I do. And I love it. And it's fun to go through the cards and sign them and send them back. And hopefully we make everybody happy when I do it.
Yeah, I know you do, because I can remember as a child going to a Pawtucket Red Sox game, catching a foul ball. I got it autographed by the Jody Reed, and I thought this thing was going to be like worth millions of dollars. Like, I just cherished this possession of catching a foul ball. So I know for a fact you're making a lot of people's day and year, and they'll cherish that for always. So kudos to you. But we are due for a giveaway. We're going to make somebody else really happy right now too, with a pair of our Prime Elevation speakers. And that happy person is Brandon Ellingson. Brandon Ellingson. Congratulations, Brandon. We got
Yay, Brandon.
Elevation coming your way. Well, I do have to ask one baseball question. I think it's probably the most frequently asked baseball question over the past year and a half. What do you think of the pitch clock?
I love it.
Wouldn't have annoyed you as a player?
No, I was a really fast worker, so it would never have affected me. So I loved getting the ball back, being ready to pitch, and going at the hitter. So I threw some of the quickest games that probably don't give the fans a very good experience, because I remember some games where I probably was done in 2 hours and 10 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the fans didn't have enough time to go to the beer garden 4 or 5 times while I was right.
Shame on you.
But so no, I have to ask. I got to ask Glendon then, because I'm a baseball fan for a long time, and I found some of the slower pitching pitchers sometimes got in their own head. It felt like to me like they would have been better with a pitch clock, because they didn't overthink it. I can name some names, but I don't want to. There were some people that you could just tell they were slow, and they couldn't find their rhythm some days. And I'm wondering, maybe the pitch clock helps a pitcher in some weird ways. No.
Yeah, I think it does. There's definitely something to be said for paralysis by analysis for us pitchers. That we get the ball back, we know what pitch we want to throw, we have conviction in it, and we try and execute it. That's kind of how we would teach if I was talking to you guys, if you were high school or college pitchers. And that's the most important part, because if you sometimes start to overthink things and let other thoughts creep in there, you can be in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, and I think from watching it on television specifically, it definitely has made it much more watchable than I think when there was no timing in place and people were doing laps around the mound or fixing every piece of their equipment in the batter's box. So it's definitely helped the pace of play from that regard. I didn't mind it so much being there live, because again, you're in the ballpark, but for TV watching, definitely. It is a Super Bowl week, which we didn't even talk about. So I feel like before we let you go, we got to ask you for, not necessarily a score, but if you want to lay a pick on us on who you're thinking might win, or share any of what you're doing this week for the big game, I'd love to hear about it, Glendon.
I will be watching at home with a small group of family and any friends that swing by. Nothing big, no party or anything this week. I will be 100% rooting for the Chiefs. Chiefs are my 1B. 1A is my Seahawks from Seattle. Chiefs are my 1B. When I came up with the Royals in Kansas City, I kind of adopted the Chiefs as my second team that I rooted for. And I am a huge Patrick Mahomes fan, and I played for the Mets with his dad. So I've been friends with Pat Mahomes Sr. and I for a long time. And I've known Patrick since he was a little fella, 4 or 5 years old, running around our clubhouse. So I always root for them.
And he was a pitcher first, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a pitcher and a football player in high school. And then when he went to Texas Tech, he was, football. And yeah, he's a heck of an athlete. And his dad was a really, really incredible athlete. Could play all 3 sports too. Yeah, and Patrick could play some hoops too.
Yeah. If you had that kind of talent, would you rather be a quarterback, or would you have rather been a pitcher in Major League Baseball? You did have that talent. That was a terrible way to phrase it. But if you were making the decision like he was.
I really think, and especially, I don't know, here's another show we could throw out there, and I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal, that quarterback documentary on Netflix that followed him and Kirk Cousins, and I can't remember who the other, Mariota maybe. I think being a starting NFL quarterback has got to be the hardest job in sports. I think they have to process so much information and be on top of their game. It's really, really crazy to watch how talented those guys are. So I would probably say I wouldn't want to be a quarterback because it would be too hard for me. I'd stick with left-handed pitcher in the big leagues.
Yeah, there you go. Well, do you have? I know you recently did an event with the Cubs. You've been doing a lot, or just around the game of baseball. Spring training's coming up. Can people catch you anywhere? Anything you want to tease as far as upcoming appearances or things you want to talk about?
No appearances, but I have a really, really cool project that's been in the works for 2.5 years. I'm a executive producer on a documentary that is coming out hopefully this summer or possibly a little bit later, about 20 strikeout games in Major League Baseball. It's only happened 5 times in the history of Major League Baseball. It was done twice by Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson, Kerry Wood, and Max Scherzer for your Nationals there, Gary. Yep. And so I'm an executive producer on that, and it's the same producer that did Facing Nolan, the Nolan Ryan documentary. So we are about probably 80% done with production, and we are in the first rough edit of the film, and that'll hopefully be coming to video on demand and land somewhere on a streaming service hopefully this year.
Exciting. Well, that is so cool.
Send us a note when it's out. We'll definitely give it a plug here on the broadcast, and look forward to checking that out for sure. It sounds really interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Well, want to thank you for being here. We'll definitely have you on down the road, maybe an opening day broadcast or as we get closer to the MLB playoffs. But it's always a pleasure talking to you, Glendon, and enjoy any shows you have coming up, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Thank you, guys. I look forward to the next episode when you guys talk a little Ultra Evolution too. I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks, right. Glendon. Nice You're always great to have on the show. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, you, guys.
Bye. All right. Well, let's dive a little bit into sound. But before we do that, Gary, we do have an event coming up next weekend, which, again, I completely failed in all the excitement of our initial broadcast to talk about. For you folks who are in the Sunshine State, we're going to be at the Florida Audio Expo in Tampa. You just go to floridaaudioexpo.com to get all the info. And we may be playing some of those new speakers that we've been alluding to there at the show. Gary will be there, as well as myself and Larry. We'll be doing a Audiophile happy hour broadcast on Thursday night next week from the Florida Audio Expo. So if you don't have your tickets yet, come on down, make a field trip. It's all weekend long. So we'll love to hang out with you. We got some fresh demo content and some new gear to show off. So I know I couldn't be more excited about hitting the road and going to Tampa in February. What's wrong with that? Absolutely.
Well, CES is a trade show. And so we were showing our speakers to the trade, to the press, and those are obviously very hard-boiled, cynical in some cases. And so to get their excitement is very, very joyful and validating. But this is our first chance to show our new Ultra Evolution speakers to consumers and audiophiles. And so I'm really excited. And Nick knows when we decided we were going to have him there, I wasn't even going to go to that show, but I can't keep myself from going. I'm too excited to see how people react to them.
Well, we will do a extended lightning round from that broadcast, and then we have some of your questions that we'll save for future ones. But Gary, I think we should circle back to the initial question that you posed towards the beginning here about what inspired you to get into the world of audio and making high performance gear.
Well, it's funny because I'll take this from a certain angle because of what we're showing in Florida and what we showed at CES. When you are I've always been an audiophile, and I've always been a person who loved great sound from when I was really a kid. My dad had massive Bozak speakers, which were classics of those days, and Macintosh, ancillary gear, and so from the very earliest time in my life, I was an audiophile, and then I ended up when I went to business school, I started selling audio gear at the local specialty chain until I got I'll work here until I get a real job, and that ended up being my real job as I rose through the ranks, became a store manager pretty quickly, and then vice president and president of that company. which was Meyer Emco, a 10-store chain. But one thing you will find if you go to any of these specialty audio stores, so many of them don't exist anymore, but some do, is there's a lot of guys and ladies who work there, and they're like, wow, what were these people thinking when they designed this product or that product? And we did a lot of that. And so a lot of the folks that I was shoulder to shoulder with in those days, they're so jealous of me because I came to manufacturing about 15 years ago and learned how to create products after knowing how people feel when they experience products and how I felt when I experienced products. And so it's pretty darn joyful to be able to say, I'm not going to make those mistakes. I'm going to make, here are things I know people don't like, or here are things I know that make the product not sound its best. And able to actually do that at SVS is, I'm going to say my life's work. It's almost like my brother once said to me, I think your whole life prepared you for this job, everything you've ever done. And it's true. So yeah, this is like we say, Ultra Evolution is the culmination of everything we've been thinking about what makes a great speaker. It's also the culmination of my life's work of creating amazing products that are within reach of a normal person. Don't have to be mortgage the house or have a giant inheritance that you can draw from, that you just a normal person can have, that level of excellence. That is my mission and the SVS mission.
So we did talk a lot about live music, and I know that's another one of your passions personally, all of us really. And I'm curious, and I would ask Smith, our chief designer, this too. But that love of live music experiences and being able to go there and hear the instruments and the vocalist perform in person, does that help, or does that frame how you actually do voicing or create products? Like, what benefit is there to that, if at all? Having those live music experiences and creating audio products.
So absolutely, because if you're, I think I'm not that unusual in the world of CEOs, and it's very hard for a CEO who's looking at the future, measuring the past, trying to run a company, to surrender themselves to the moment. And that's what I'm able to do in a live performance. I'm able to surrender myself and be in the present and just be swept into what's going on. And that to me is the spiritual joy of a live concert when it's at its best. And you have to have a certain headspace to get there. And guess what? A great audio system can do that. And I find myself, I was telling the team this actually, Nick, you may remember, I don't know if maybe you don't even listen to me on the team calls, but if you did, I was kind of saying how, like I look forward to it all day long to the concert. When I'm going to see Tool that night, I'm just thinking all day long about going to that concert. That's how I've been feeling lately as I'm going downstairs to my system, just kind of looking forward to what am I going to listen to on this, and can I surrender myself to the moment, have a convincing, immersive experience? Because to me, that's one of the great joys of life. So if we can create speakers that do that, yeah. But if you don't have a frame of reference, which is a live performance, like you're going to come to DC and see Yo-Yo Ma, which is a completely different kind of live performance than Tool. You and I and our wives are going to go to Yo-Yo Ma. To surrender yourself to the moment and experience that, and then be able to approximate it in your own home, what could be better than that?
Well, I think that's very well put and a good way to end it. And I do want to set expectations with people. Next week, we're going to be at the Florida Audio Expo. That is still not going to be our full-on explanation of all the cool stuff that's happening with Ultra Evolution. We're going to have Smith Freeman on, our chief product designer, a little bit later in the month, or maybe even early March. And we'll promise we'll give all the details then, but you might be able to see them in the background. And we'll have, the organizer of the Florida Audio Expo. And so we'll certainly talk a little bit about them. We see all the questions coming in. We are saving a bunch of these to talk about down the road. Thank you again for all of the very insightful comments and questions, and also the live music. I mean, I was seeing so many different acts now that have me wanting to just go out and buy a bunch of tickets. So thank you for the audience participation with Gary and I and Glendon. Really,
they kept us going, didn't they, Nick? Just the two of us in this show, and Glendon was awesome. But yeah, thanks to the audience, thanks to our community.
But we'll have our crew back. Send your positive thoughts to Ed. Our final giveaway of the evening is a SB1000 Pro subwoofer, and the winner of the SB1000 Pro is Randy Couch. Congratulations, Randy Couch. Got some bump and bass coming your way.
Yay, Randy.
Just to recap, next Thursday, we'll be live 6 p.m. from sunny Tampa Bay, Florida. Come join us at the Florida Audio Expo if you're in the area. And if not,
or you can join us online, right? We're doing a virtual audio happy hour from the Florida Audio Expo.
Yeah, don't join us in person during the happy hour. We won't be able to fit you on camera, but come join us in our demo.
Makes me go to my hotel room.
Yeah, I do. You're actually going to have to, because we're going to have a couple guests. So sorry about that, Gary. But appreciate everyone tuning in as always. We'll have the normal crew back next week, and we'll check you then. Happy listening.
See you next week, everybody.